But
This
yeah,
is then he's
I'm
an
dead.
anime guy.
Yeah,
I'm
there might
like
be new
Barbie
people.
guy.
Barbie guy, yeah.
Yeah.
Because yeah, I mean, I mentioned the link to a few people. I don't know how many of them are going to show up or whatever, but like, you know, it's probably good that everyone knows. And I'm David, and I'm working on ArkType. So I'm glad to be here and support the charity stream and get to talk about some new upcoming features and you know, potentially be able to help out with some types. It sounds like all a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sounds great.
So let me just have a few words about the charity stream and explain it. I'll send a link as well, and then we can start. So this charity stream is to support Ukraine. We did the same in the September, and I guess we gathered almost $900, which is huge for us. And I hope we can do some of same numbers today. We have this QR link to our local bank, which give us a possibility to get the donations exactly for such purposes. And if you don't have a possibility to scan it, I will send a link to this donation, this donation link to our bank. If it won't work for you, but you still want to do that, you can reach me out on Discord or Twitter, and I can help you out with that, maybe after the stream as well. So this is a link to this. I will do it a few times. So this support and donations will go to the volunteers I know personally. So it's not something you are donating to the government and it's going through a lot of bureaucracy. This help goes directly to the people I know who can buy advocacy cars, who can buy clothes and food and all that stuff, which is really, really helpful. And we have the same thing that we had in September, that for the biggest donation we will put you on the Drizzle side near the gold sponsorships, which can generate you a good amount of traffic for your product and for you as a developer or open source contributor. And then top 3 donators. And then all other donators on any amount will get the access to the Discord private channel that we have. That it's only that the donation specific role that can get there, where we can discuss more.
Right, and make fun of all the people who don't have access to the channel and just sort of, you know, feel good about ourselves and everything.
Yeah, exactly. So we have one question: can we use any image for sponsor? If you're talking about it will put you on the site, I mean, yes, but in the good range of allowed images, you know.
Negotiable.
Yeah.
Negotiable, yeah.
And I will open for myself this link just to see if we have any progress for that. Okay, great. So this was explained. I will repeat that maybe in 20-30 minutes when more people will be here, and also I will share. And I will share the link to my tweet. If you can retweet it, it would be great.
Who's Mike Solo?
Mike Solo
What's tweet?
Is our mic, I guess.
Left-handed musician. I have no idea who is.
Okay, so I've sent in chat and the Twitter links. If you can repost it so more people can join, would be perfect. I guess we have
70 people.
I guess I can open the creator dashboard to see. Oh, perfect. Yeah, I can do that. Yeah, it's 15 minutes. Perfect. Okay, so we can start with introducing the ArkType, and if anyone can write a chat if they know ArkType and used ArkType or had some experience with that and just heard about it. It will help us to understand what exactly should we explain about ArkType. But David, you can just start. Maybe you can share your screen if you want. Maybe you can just explain as it is. So feel free.
Yeah, sure. So I assume, I'll assume there's probably a mix of like familiarity levels with ArkType for folks in the stream. So I will assume the lowest level, which is that I have not used it at all exactly or heard of it potentially. So let me just share my screen because I can sort of probably do a little bit of introduction as I kind of give demo of the basic features.
What would be a one-liner like introduction to ArkType?
It is a validation library for TypeScript that is based on TypeScript syntax. And you can keep making it longer, but basically, if you think about things like Zod, it does a lot of the same things that Zod does, in addition to some other things. So let's see. Okay, so I'm going to share this. Hopefully, everyone can see that. Okay, so the goal for building ArkType was to make TypeScript types and TypeScript native expressive syntax available at runtime for validation, and also more broadly as a type system. So one of the things that does make it really unique as opposed to like a shallow validation library that's just checking data against types is when you define two types, you can actually compare them to one another the way you can in TypeScript and say like, hey, is this a subtype of this? Is this assignable to this other type? Which can be great, especially for library authors.
You. If you can make it's a bit closer, like a bit bigger font.
Oh,
zoom in.
Yeah.
Well, that's a little too much.
Perfect.
Okay, great. And let's get rid of this. Okay, great. I should shut off my notifications here in case anyone's like writing awful messages to me as I'm screwing up the demo or something. Okay, so just to give a basic example, so if you think about the way, well, I'll even write the like TypeScript type first, right? If I say something like user and we have name is a string and age is a number, if we kind of like look at this, this is kind of syntactic pattern. In Zod, it would be like z dot string and etc. And you continue to like chain additional constraints. But my thought was like, well, we could probably get closer to the original TypeScript and have like a more expressive, rich syntax if we can sort of string embed things. And one thing that people who might be familiar with ArkType might not know about is this extension that you see that I have like generating error messages and such for me. There's an ArkType extension for VS Code. And it's actually not, sorry, it's not generating the error messages, but it's basically like a really nice like inline display with syntax highlighting for error messages that are generated from TypeScript's type system. So essentially the ArkType version of this type looks like this. You can see that everything is auto-completed and type safe. And yeah, so if you then look at this type, you also get this like really clean, concise hover information. So I know that's kind of something that a lot of people sort of struggle with in validators like Zod, that there's like really quite a lot of pollution in the like type parameters and it can be very confusing to parse. You'll only ever see like the, core type that you defined and how it's inferred. And so you can add like TypeScript syntax like this. So here's a good example of like how the DX is really nice, especially with the extension, is you get these inline sort of error messages immediately as you type. And this is actually being parsed from the type system. So you can see like type number is not assignable to missing expected, right square bracket. So you don't need the extension to like get any of these errors. Like you would be able to hover over it and see that. It's just like having it in line for you like that as you type is extremely satisfying, I find. So like I would totally recommend it. If you want to disable that part of it, if you don't like the inline highlights, you can. But also syntax highlighting, right? It's very nice, and it makes all this stuff look really very, very well. That's a terrible type. I'm not sure what I was thinking there. Well, number, I guess it's just fine. It was number or number array, but it supports a lot of TypeScript syntax. You can really like pretty much go wild with it and say like, oh, I'm going to actually parenthesize the array. So it's a number or string array. And then you can see that you continue to get really detailed type level error messages. So this is, saying within the type that's like parsing this string, it's saying, like, you had a closed parenthesis, but there was never like an open parenthesis to start. So it gives you very specific information about that. So I think at this point, I feel pretty confident in saying it's like very close to and sometimes better than a native editor experience for defining types. You get really, really like good suggestions for autocomplete. Again, like probably better than you get natively in editor because you get a lot a lot of nonsense generally that you don't actually want to reference. Whereas when you are defining a type like this, you get the exact like set of aliases that are available in this scope that would be like valid to reference here essentially. And you get them within expressions as well, which I'm not sure if I demoed that yet, but essentially like if I write string or n, you get like, string or never or null or number, which are the, possible completions of that with valid aliases. And you can use like spaces as well, and that's all fine. And you could basically just use arbitrary TypeScript syntax, and that's all done very performantly and can scale very far, which is also really exciting. And you can just use this to validate your data. It looks like this in beta. So you'll have to bear with me because it's a API that's changed a little bit, but it's out in errors, I hope, in this version of it. No, I was just like adjusting this, so we'll just go with out for now. And there's something you use to check the errors that I may have just renamed. And then so we'll say like user, and then maybe we like got some information from a server or something, and we're wanting to validate that. And this is just a discriminated union similar to Zod, where like you get a set of valid data or a set of descriptive error messages, which there it is. Maybe it was a typo or something. Anyway, so yeah, this is pretty much like a familiar validator pattern, but all of the definition, syntax, and that kind of stuff is probably pretty new for people who haven't seen ArkType before and are not used to strings being type safe. So that is pretty different from like most stuff that's out there, but it's been refined a lot and it feels really, really great to use, especially with the extension. So I'm definitely excited to be sharing it.
I have a question. I actually have a couple of questions. So first of all, you mentioned that it is type performant and scalable. And for those who don't know, David also released a library for measuring types performance.
Yep.
Yeah, types performance. And Theo recently has made a video about that. Go check it out. So I assume for this kind of libraries like ArkType, Typebox, Valibot, and Zod, there are several aspects to performance. One of them is types performance, and the other one is runtime overhead. Yeah. And I've seen people mentioning that Zod does not support streaming, and if you are working with API requests like high volume API requests, and you need performance in the runtime, there is an aspect of the runtime overhead. So can you elaborate on those 2 points? So
yeah, so I think to give Zod credit, I don't think that people are totally fair when they compare it to like other validators and say that the performance is awful. I don't think it's incredibly highly optimized or anything like that, but like compared to libraries that exist across most domains, like has a very reasonable performance characteristics. I don't think that they're doing anything egregious in that regard. So I think that the type performance has not been optimized, and it is really bad, to be honest. I think that Zod's like type inference, people might know that like I recently posted that I was interested in doing some consulting work for this month, and I've had quite a number of people reach out to me for like help optimizing TypeScript types and optimizing TypeScript performance and getting rid of like editor errors where things like the TS server slows down and crashes, and like more than half of them are people using Zod. So obviously that's a big issue. So I would say that like there could be big improvements in that area for Zod specifically. And we've really sought to take that to the next level with, the type performance benchmarking was mentioned. So like, hopefully I could give an example of like what that essentially looks like at a very high level, which is just that, we have all of these bench tests for various, various operators. Here's like a good one that just like imports scopes that are auto-generated from hundreds of like cyclic cross-referencing types and measures the number of instantiations. And so we like rerun these when we make changes to any of our parsing logic. and so we can see immediately like what the impact is on the number of type instantiations. So that's a huge help, because basically like without that kind of tooling, you're kind of flying blind, and like it can be very unpredictable the way that you develop intuitions, but it's unpredictable the way that TypeScript will react when you make a certain change to a complex type that's referenced in lots of places.
Yeah, and we certainly faced similar kind of issues with Drizzle, and then we sort of made an iteration on TypeScript type performance, and it helped, but yeah, we are seeking to improve on that in that domain too, because it's for developers, it's way more important than runtime performance. I mean, for Drizzle users at least, yeah.
I will say I'm excited at like, to also share some of the really significant runtime optimizations we've made for beta. I think the like alpha performance at runtime is nothing special, and is somewhere in the ballpark of Zod for most cases. I think it's somewhat efficient for more efficient for like larger types, and maybe there's extra overhead for smaller types to do parsing or something like that in alpha. In beta, we utilize just-in-time compilation by default to allow these to be really highly optimized. And again, like I want to be very clear that like I don't think that for the vast majority of people, probably like 90-95%, something like that, like that Zod's performance is going to be a deal breaker. So but it is now like 400 times faster than Zod. So it's just because of this like very ridiculous technique that you use to sort of like, pre-generate the like validation so that it can be optimized within, V8 and then run it at that point. So it is definitely satisfying, and it'll be great for people who use things like Typebox or Tipia. It's like, has kind of like similar performance characteristics for those validators, but I think that this like expressive syntax combined with that runtime performance is really exciting.
It might not be an issue when you're using like a naked Zod, like Zod only, but when you're introducing Zod into other libraries and then you wrap around of that, so like Zod and TRPC has its own layer of types on top of Zod, and then when you like deduct the type performance by 400 times, it makes a lot more. It brings a lot more value to the table. So yeah.
Right. Well, to be clear, like I was actually talking about the runtime performance in this case. So the 400 times improvement was based on some work we did, like optimizing the validators for compilation in beta. The type level performance, I think, is more significant to many users. Like I said, it's like very common that I get people asking about type instantiation depth errors and things like that in Zod, or their editor being very slow.
David dropped off.
Yep.
If I would be consulting people on type performance, I would recommend more RAM and a better CPU. That's the easiest solution. All right. That's it.
Yeah.
We can go.
Let's wrap it up.
Let's wrap up. I do love the point that when you hover over the type of the ArkType, you see a human readable object, unlike Zod, because that's fine.
Hey,
can you guys hear me again? I'm not sure what happened there. Okay. Let's see where I left off. Was just that those layers. I'd say that's like a really endemic problem, and both one that I hope to solve by building a better solution myself. I think ArkType has a lot of other really fundamental advantages. So, but I want to make sure, of course, that it's really performant at a type level and at runtime. But also in building that, the only way to like build ArkType and have it be really performant, and to have it be able to, I guess I didn't really actually show what it looks like, but like if you have these scopes with these are like hundreds and hundreds of these types that each reference other cyclic types, but you can actually like define them and interact with them, and you basically like don't really have any delay at all, like getting all those types. And so it's really easy to use, even for like these really extreme cyclic cases. It really doesn't slow down. But the only way that that is possible is, well, using tooling like this and just constantly iterating and seeing what impact like various changes have, and then just sort of like right. And that tooling didn't exist before I built it to be able to do this. So I'm really hoping that in addition to solving the problem directly within ArkType, that like publishing a test, which is the type performance and also like type assertion library that Alex mentioned, that this will enable other library authors in the ecosystem to solve these problems as well.
Yeah, this is very valuable, and we value TypeScript so much for the type system that some people like hate. We understand that, but this type system is not for you to build like a regular day-to-day backend or front end. This type system is for us to build tools for you, the developers, which will like skyrocket the developer experience. And
exactly.
This was completely unexpected to us when we hit the performance types performance issue. This was like a completely new domain, and it is great that you've built this tool. We'll definitely use this tool to make a better TypeScript tolerance. This will help a lot. It makes a lot of sense to do that.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely born out of necessity, working on similar sorts of optimizations. I have the exact same perspective on, no, like I don't think it's generally appropriate to be parsing strings at a type level in your application code. It seems like that would be pretty ridiculous in terms of ROI. But like if I can create something that like looks and feels like TypeScript syntax and is extremely fast, and is extremely reliable and can scale really far, and can also check types and compare them at runtime. And that requires some TypeScript black magicry on my end. Like it feels very worthwhile, especially because that stuff is all tested very robustly as well. As I think that's another one of the big areas that like has kind of been missing. Is just that there's some like expect type utilities. And just to kind of give a quick example of, well, maybe I should just go to the list of tests and just look at one of these or something. But basically, hopefully you can still see this kind of stuff. Basically, this is a really common pattern, like in all of our type tests for like parsing errors and things like that. Is that we'll use this like throws and has, this is a test, and then it will use this like throws and has type error to make sure that hopefully that import's resolving, but to make sure that like both at runtime and when you actually statically look at the error message you get, which I know there's a comment about like VS Code alone. I do want to be clear that like everything is happening in the TypeScript type system in like vanilla TypeScript. This is not like some kind of like weird injected thing or some custom version of TypeScript or anything like that. So this display is just kind of like a display optimization that pulls out the error message. But basically what this allows you to do is like have robust testing for your types and ensure, like in this case, that it kind of stays in parallel with what you develop at runtime. And there's lots of like really detailed messages that we check this way. So yeah, things like this. If you so these are like semantic errors. I know I have with like if you're I must have moved this test, but basically like if you do things, I mean I could just show it, I guess. If you do things like say like, oh, number divisible by 0, you get like the like modulo operator must be followed by a non-zero integer literal, like things like this. Like you want to make sure you can develop them and have them be really robust both at a type level and at runtime. Like, is that feasible to do if you're just like an application developer trying to like spin up a server and a website or whatever? Absolutely not. That's like ridiculous. But like having that kind of tooling in the ecosystem, like both through ArkType and tools like Drizzle that like really heavily invest in creating super optimized developer experience, and then having that kind of be the API for like a really powerful tool under the hood that solves significant problems is like, I think, my favorite thing about the TypeScript ecosystem, that like you kind of have this like super simple on one end, and like the vast majority of code can leverage these really powerful tools. But like the only
Abstract it
reason
away.
any of that is possible is that really powerful underlying type system exists.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I agree. Yeah.
that
So
makes...
because we've spent a lot of time trying to improve the DX for end users, right? Possibly by increasing the complexity of types on our side as like library developers, but to make people's experience with the library better.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I think like the alpha experience in terms of completions and in terms of like type inference and stuff in ArkType is very good. And so like all this stuff I'm demoing in terms of like the extension or like, you know, getting like these really detailed error messages or getting getting completions like in the middle of expressions and, you know, having these really clean hovers and stuff like that. All of that is pretty much going to be exactly the same in alpha. So if you guys are okay with it, I guess I could demo a couple features that are coming in beta that aren't available yet,
Yeah.
but will be soon. Okay,
Yeah,
so the biggest...
yeah,
Go ahead.
Like before going to the beta, I guess let me just make this repeat statement about what we are doing.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Already, and then we can do all in on the beta features we have. So just to repeat, I want to welcome everyone who joined after we started. So this stream, on this stream we are talking with David from ArkType and looking into the ArkType itself, and then we're looking into the like beta feature that I guess will be released soon. Am I right? So it's not live yet.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not live
Yes,
yet,
that's
but
right.
it's going to be released. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So and we will just look into it, look how it works, look into the improvements that were made, and then we will do some session on the Drizzle API, a relational API improvement, because we really need help with the TypeScript, with this hard parts of the TypeScript. So this is what the stream about, and
Cool.
this stream called Charity Stream, and this stream is to support Ukraine, which we did in September as well, and raised a good amount of money that helped us, and want to do the same right now. You have the QR on the stream where you can scan it and donate. If you can't scan it, I can send you the link, like the direct link. We also see that you had some problems with making a payment. We're trying to investigate the issue with that, and we'll pin you right after it's fixed. If not, maybe we can just send some maybe Stripe link or anything, so you can still do that. So those are the links, and the main purpose of this, like the main how to say it, all the money that will be raised here will go to the volunteers I know personally, and the help will go directly to the people I know who can do, like buy the clothes, buy the food, buy the evacuation cars really fast. It won't go through the government and all the like bureaucracy that can be, as you know, it can be in the government level. So that's why I'm really confident how those money will work. And we have some prizes for people who will do the donation. So the biggest donation will get the place on Drizzle ORM site near the gold sponsors, which can generate you a good amount of traffic for your product or for you as a developer, I guess. And then all other donations of any amount will get an access to the Discord private channel. The only way to get there is only such charity streams or similar streams, so it's maybe twice a year a chance for you to get there, so you can use it. And then I will just send my post on Twitter about our stream that we are live. So if you can repost it, will be also great.
Cool. All All right, well, that's really exciting, and it's definitely just really nice to hear as well that you're sort of taking so much care personally to make sure that you're going through volunteers that as friends, and that you can trust to like do the best thing with the money. I think that's super valuable. So that's a really awesome thing to hear.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely encourage anyone watching. You should definitely donate. It seems like a really valuable thing, and I'm sure that all of us, as well as everyone in Ukraine who would benefit, would really appreciate it. Okay, so in terms of beta features, so the biggest change from an API perspective is that in alpha there were these like helper methods that you would import if you needed to do a union of multiple objects and you didn't want to scope. There are lots of like very powerful features and lots of ways to do things, but like essentially in alpha it's going to complain at me because I'm going to write something that's not actually real. But I'll say like whatever. Let's say don't do that. Let's say that you wanted to do something like this. Okay. So like you would import this like union helper or something, and then you would pass in some number of parameters, and then this would create a union type of these two types, which is fine. But like I know that a lot of people definitely like the sort of like discoverability aspect of being able to use chaining. And so partially that's kind of addressed by discoverability is sort of addressed by the fact that you get really great auto completions. Like that's really good for discoverability because you can immediately see like every built-in keyword, and that's a big help. But if you're wanting to chain like off of a type, in beta, we now allow that to be done directly. So like, let's say I have a user type and I want to create some like other variant. I would say like, user or, so this is like the new version of the union helper. And then I can pass in, whatever else I want. Like maybe instead of an age, like you can pass in a birthday, which is a date or something like that. Really this is a nonsense type, and these should be probably like unified in some way. But if you had some janky API and you needed to type that, then like you still get this like very clean representation of what the type is that parallels the TypeScript definition one-to-one. There's some other really cool ways to do it syntactically that mirror TypeScript. I added these like top level tuple expressions. So another cool thing is like if you start doing this, you actually get operator completion. You can like pass additional parameters to type. And so like, then you can say this, and it'll get and then, so then, yeah, then you basically like pass this as the right operand this way, and this works the same. So I personally would use this because I'm like, yeah, it's a one-to-one with TypeScript, and that's what I'm all about. But like chaining will be familiar with people, and it's also just, it's really great in terms of discoverability. So we'll support those things. The main thing that like kind of prevented us from actually doing that initially was that you'll notice when you look at this type that there's this extra parameter called ark, which it represents the like default set of keywords that are available. So depending on how much TypeScript you've done, you might know that like if you start, like let's say that I want to give validation here and like auto completion and stuff, like the information has to come from somewhere about like what are the keywords that are available. And so essentially the reason that it initially wasn't chainable was that I was like, I don't want to have to pass this thing around because right now it's just a default set of keywords, but you can define your own set of keywords and extend the default set of keywords. So like, let's say you create a user type, you want to define that type as like alias user, and then you want to reference it in your other types, like in expressions like user or, admin or something like that. You need a way to like actually pass that information around. And so like, let's say you had a really large set of keywords, then like I will admit that in beta, like this hover information will also include that large set of keywords. So it's like slightly less beautiful. But if you're just using the default, it's still beautiful, and you get chaining, which I think in the end is more valuable. So, you can chain lots of things. Like this allows, it's just a quick way to do validation. Let's see, but like, equals and extends are like the type level check. So like, again, you do like extends, and then you'd pass in another definition. or a type is also a valid definition. So if you like had another type defined somewhere or whatever, you can like check to see if this user type satisfies another type. And it even includes like runtime constraints and stuff. So like maybe the age has to be less than 100. Like it's a type system that includes the fact that like, you know, age less than 100 is a more specific constraint than just age. But like it would know that like, you know, a number between 5 and 10 is always going to be a number between 0 and 100. So like that would satisfy that type. So there's like quite a lot of like internal logic where it actually is able to like really deeply compute and reduce these like runtime constraints alongside the core structural types. So that's a really exciting thing. And I think this chaining API is like super natural to use. And I would use it for probably cases like this. Like this is the sort of like transform or whatever. So like you have this thing as input, and then you know, say that you want to like, I don't know, say that you want to like make the I don't know, you want to like make the age negative or something because you're aging in reverse and you're Benjamin Button or whatever. So you can do that, but essentially it's a transformation, and like that's actually also, we try really hard to like represent this in like a really nice way. So basically you like see the input and you see the output, and maybe even cooler is like that if you have a transformation that occurs like at a specific path. So I'll just use a keyword this time, but like basically if I say like parse, there's a lot of features, but if I say like parse dot date or something, you can look and see that like yeah, so we get like all these kind of, this is a new thing that I won't talk about yet, but we get this like really, this is what I want to focus on. We get this like really detailed information about the fact that, you know, it's not just that the whole thing is transforming between two giant objects. Like maybe you have some nested transformation at like a specific path. Well, now you can see like, hey, well, the shape is always going to be this. But like, I know that the name that I input as a string is going to be output as a date. And so that ends up making the representation here much, much clearer to read, especially for large types where you have like maybe one transformation. You don't want to see like 1,000 repeated properties or something like that. And it's also really exciting because of the way the type system works. It means that instead of having like, I think there's like a Zod effect or something that has a lot more of a limited API than what you can do with like a Zod schema. So that doesn't apply to ArkType because we can granularly represent like these transformations. And so there are precise like type definitions for what it means to say like, you know, like for example, like you can transform a name property on an object, and that doesn't prevent you from adding a new property to that object. Like that's logically consistent, but you'll actually get like really specific errors when you define a type, if for example, you like intersect two transformations or like something like that. So it has this like really robust set of rules around that stuff that I think is going to be really exciting to see how people use that. So yeah, there's a lot to talk about.
There's
this
a lot
really
of stuff,
powerful
yeah.
features like generics. We have type level generics. People might have seen like that I tweeted about that, and it was exciting. We have like scopes and imports and exports. I just said you could define your own keywords. Like all of the keywords that are in here by default are just because I define them in a default scope, but you can make up whatever keywords you want and either extend this one or like build your own kind of like DSL using whatever stuff that you need. And the scopes can actually be imported and exported like modules at a type level, where you would say like, you know, dot to dot to like destructure like, you know, my scope dot import, and you'd actually get all the keywords like inline and can use them in your types that you're defining. So there's a lot of really powerful features, but I've talked about this so much and I'll just talk forever. So I will just like send it back to you guys. And if people have specific stuff they want to see, I will answer those questions.
Perfect. That was a lot of stuff. Yeah, and I do really appreciate how simple when you hover over your type that you can see human readable.
It's really clean
type information. Yeah, this is extremely nice.
Thanks. Yeah, I think like I will also say like despite the hover information being nice, which like I don't know if this is nice or not. We'll figure that out. But like but this part of it is the more established part that's been around, and that's definitely going to be a thing. I think it's very good. And the thing is though, is really like, it's ironic because with this kind of syntax, you actually don't need to hover very often, or like at least a
Oh, yeah.
lot less. Like if you're passing things around and you don't have the original context, like sure, I mean, you're going to be hovering, but like a lot of the time, like you're going to like be using validators close to where they're defined. Like that's a pretty common thing. And like it is so nice to literally like let's say you're doing a simple type like this or whatever it is. Like the fact that you are just mirroring TypeScript syntax and like you would never need to hover to see that this is this. Like they look almost exactly the same. So you actually just end up hovering a lot less in general. So that is also a really nice benefit, that just like things are just intuitive. And even if you have like unions and things like that, like you're basically already sort of looking at a TypeScript type. So that's a big help.
Yeah, and the last but not least, there was a case when we were originally trying to make Drizzle very type safe. So you can catch logical errors prior to the runtime at compile time. But we ended up having huge TypeScript errors. And when we were testing on the real projects, we realized that even highly experienced developers are unable to parse those errors and understand what they are.
Yeah.
So we deliberately lowered the level of type safety for people to have a better DX.
Yeah. The biggest issue was not that the type errors were like hard to parse, is that they were shown not in the places in code where they actually originated.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Makes sense.
And we didn't figure out how to fix it really, because at that time I personally just assumed that's how TypeScript works, and you cannot really do anything with it. So if you can prove me wrong, I would be very excited about that, because
well, there are definitely limitations you'll run into with TypeScript and things that are suboptimal, just in terms of like the way it's going to display certain types of errors and stuff. But I kind of like to think of my like validation method that like this kind of stuff, where you do this and you get this like kind of error message that I wrote for this scenario as being like a hack to just do what I want. And I pretty much use that a lot. And it's great. It's very performant. You can like get it to work with like sort of arbitrarily complex like inference. I mean, the rules that it validates are really crazy, because it's not only this kind of like syntactic stuff for parsing a string, it's also like semantic stuff. Like you may have seen, like if you say Boolean less than 5 or whatever it is, like you get like a semantic validation error, which means it's also like inferring part of the type and then using that to validate the original string was valid in that expression. So like you can basically do anything. So if you're willing to like, okay, so this is what the base experience is. It's like you hover this. I don't think it's really bad at all. I mean, you type Boolean is less than 5. It's not assignable to type. Bounded expression Boolean. So I mean, I think it's really cool to see it in line and everything, but like it's not required. Like this was all originally built to be like a really good native IDE experience. So for people who are running into sort of like the mess that like TypeScript can give you sometimes, like let's say you have some really specific scenario where there's like a certain type of object that like looks kind of like another type of object, and people might confuse the two and like pass the wrong one in. But like the error you get in TypeScript is this like ridiculous structural comparison that confuses everyone. Like that's a perfect case for this kind of thing, where I would write an error message and say like, hey, like you tried to pass this thing, like actually what we need is like an object of this type. And I think that's really, really effective. Like, I think like, sure, some people will say like, well, you're like abusing a type system, or like but like honestly, it just, like you said, I mean, like has been said, it just makes developer experience better and gives people like a really clear path of like how they should actually solve the problem. So I'm definitely a very big proponent of this strategy, and I'm happy to see if it can be leveraged to solve the issue you're describing.
So when we were going through the brainstorming on the new API for relations, I mean, obviously, we went to check out every other library that supports the relations, and everybody seems to be narrowing down on mostly the same stuff, just with a different kind of naming. So it's either decorators with one off or many off, or it's going to be JSON-like structure, or Prisma with its own DSL. And while I'm watching what you do with TypeScript types, I feel really glad that we never went the path of the custom DSL, because I mean, the velocity of TypeScript like improvement by the TypeScript team, and now seeing what you as a toolmaker can do with the types is just I mean, it's a complete no-brainer for us to stay within the TypeScript and just keep learning deeper and improve the schema definition, the query building, the types performance, and it's gonna be like
Yeah,
amazing.
I totally agree. And I mean, I give a lot of credit to the TypeScript team. And I think that they don't get enough credit for like how performant TypeScript actually is, and the fact that it can handle all this stuff. Like, sure, I optimized it, but the fact that it's
Yeah.
even possible for it to be that performant is actually pretty absurd. And I know, like, from having, worked on the code base a bit, that like they take that stuff really seriously. And I think people just get obsessed with like Rust and all that stuff, and it's great. Like, I think if you can rewrite something and make it a lot faster, then that's awesome. But I think that like probably if you're having significant type performance issues, like maybe TypeScript, they'll always try to optimize more. I know they're doing like parallel type checking right now across like a repository, which I think could be really helpful to a lot of people. But like actually by far the bigger problems are in the ecosystem. Like that's the low hanging fruit. Like big libraries people are using like Zod and TRPC that like
Mhm.
cause these huge issues in your IDE that are avoidable. And on the one hand, like sure, TypeScript's a little bit opaque about performance optimization. They don't really give tips about that, but like it is achievable. And like I think the onus has to be on them the same way that when you're developing any functionality at a runtime level, like as a developer you're expected to like take reasonable steps to optimize that. Well, maybe that's extreme for most people for types, but if the types are a really central part of what your library does, like at a certain point, like you kind of just have to invest the time to make sure that your tooling scales, or obviously it'll get superseded by tooling that does a better job handling those problems eventually. So yeah, I mean, I think that like what TypeScript has done is amazing and enables, of course, so much. I think that there's so many things that where I was able to build an ArkType that I never would have thought would have worked, and definitely would not have thought would have scaled as far as they do, especially in terms of like cyclic references and all that crazy stuff. Like it's at this point, it feels like you like jailbroke your phone or like whatever, and you can just do arbitrary stuff. Like it's very very powerful now, where like you can just kind of achieve whatever you want. And when you said specifically like, well, I'm really glad we didn't do our own create our own DSL that would be parsed separately from TypeScript. I mean, ArkType literally is a DSL, but it's in TypeScript, and
Yeah,
like
It's in
that just
TypeScript,
proves
yeah.
that like you can do anything. Like you can just arbitrarily define that and get the best of both worlds, where like it's natively in your TypeScript code and understood by the TypeScript server, and like has type safety and has completions and everything you'd want. But like it also, well, I guess that's pretty much. I don't really know what I would also do. Like that's pretty much everything you'd want, right? So yeah, I'm glad that you went that route. It definitely feels like that's the way to go.
Yeah. So the thing I noticed, and one of our most, I mean, I can share the screen now, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's.
Yeah. Oh, come on. Window. Okay, test. So this is basically the sheet we went through while discussing the new potential relations API, because we do, I mean, when we originally designed it, we made it similar to Prisma in terms of different naming, so that it's easier for people to migrate from Prisma to Drizzle. And now when we sort of have a solid foundation of that, we are like, okay, we are ready to iterate to the next step, to the next version of it. And we went through all the different libraries, and this is pretty basic stuff. I mean, you declare an owner, you declare the type of relation, you can declare it in a JSON way, you can declare it in the like chainable way, like we do with our yeah, but that's a pretty basic stuff. And we were like, okay, let's do something like imaginary stuff. Let's pretend we can do anything, and we sort of landed down to the. For me, it's like personally the best possible way, and we were like fantasizing about this kind of relations declaration. So you pass the schema you've declared in TypeScript with the relations function, and now you have this sort of magical R, which you can use just like you're using our current SQL template, magical SQL operator, I call it. And so we were like, okay, if this is auto-completable, this is gonna be like it's gonna blow everybody's head. But as we sort of thought through that for us to autocomplete this, we will need to infer all possible types, and it's going to escalate like it's going to escalate to millions and billions of stuff suggestions for people, because they're going to have like hundreds of tables with dozens of rows, and you can have like multi-field to multi-field relations, you can have junction tables, etc. So we were like, this is completely impossible. But then I saw that you have this auto-completion where you type number and it stays as a number. It doesn't autocomplete you anything else unless you like hit space or place a vertical line. And I was like, okay, so there is a way for us to make like progressive type inference or progressive auto-completion system. So this is basically number one goal for us to talk about today. If you can describe, maybe you can live share it and describe how you do it in TypeScript. Because as I've said, for me personally, this is gonna blow everybody's mind if you introduce relations like that. This is gonna look extremely sleek, nice, and intuitive, and
no, sure thing. Okay, let's share my screen again here. Okay, like it's an off. Where am I thinking? Operand probably. All right. So the one of my I'm gonna kind of zoom. Well, you'll have to let me know. But if I maybe oh no, I just changed my key bindings and I closed it. That's fine. I'll just open it back up. But I closed the window because it used to be zoom out, and now it's closed the window. My mistake there. But let me just share that again, and I'll try to avoid making that mistake. Okay, so I'm just gonna zoom out a tiny bit. But like one of my favorite things about the like static and dynamic parsing is this like, it really showcases the like type level TypeScript because it, we went pretty far out of our way to sort of make sure like, hey, like the runtime implementation like literally looks exactly like what's happening in the types. And it really ensures that they kind of like can easily be maintained in parallel. Doesn't look like exactly what I wanted in terms of where the like completion is. So let me see if I can actually just find it. This not ArkType. That's not oh yeah, that's nope. I'm gonna just we'll just look at the string parsing, because then I'll just find it from the top down, and it'll probably be useful anyway to sort of like see for you guys like how the actual like parsing algorithm works. Maybe that'll help contextualize it a little bit. So essentially like this is really nice property with all of the like types that I'm parsing in ArkType, where essentially like the main thing that I'm interested in, like as I loop and like build up the type from a string, is whether there's like a current operand to operate on, or whether we need to shift a new operand. So like string would be an operand. And so like if we don't have anything, we need to shift a new operand. But if we have string, then we need an operator, or we're done, or you can be done with the type at that point. So basically like when you're shifting an operand, something like string, like that would be a case where oh yeah, so I was in the right ballpark. Right, unenclosed, yes. Okay. So when you're shifting an operator like, an operand like string, that would be a case where you'd want autocomplete because, well, you type s, like that's when you want to see string. And so you don't need all of this because like you probably don't have that many operators and you don't have that much syntax. I'm assuming you mostly just want the keywords. But the important thing is this like parse unenclosed. That's like unenclosed just means like it's not like quoted or like, you know, a regex literal, something that has like arbitrary content between two tokens. So basically, I know there's like a specific, let's see, shift until next terminator. Yeah, hold on one second. Okay, with the state dot completion. Okay, did I move completion of text? That's not. I'm sorry. Just hold on one second. I'm definitely gonna.
Yeah.
Definitely
It's a
gonna find
very
this.
hard subject. Yeah.
Well, it's
To be
honestly
honest.
like this has actually been stable for a while, and I actually just haven't worked on it in like several months. So I'm a little bit rusty with like my last layout because I went through many iterations on this, but like where this is, I know exactly how the thing actually works. So I just need to find. Oh, perfect. Probably this. Yeah. Great. Okay, we're good. We found it. Okay, so so this is a lot of stuff that it's sort of doing when it encounters like an unenclosed literal. So it's not like a quote or something like that. You can see like this is basically an alias. This means like a generic argument. So it's coming from all these different sources. So that might parallel kind of what you're doing, where like it could be multiple types of references or something like that. The most general one is probably just this, like, you know, the fact that it's basically a keyword in the current scope would make it resolvable. And so this is like the core pattern that you are wanting to use, where essentially like you're saying like, okay, well, is the thing that was actually passed in, or like whatever, you know, maybe you parse until like there's a space or something like that, whatever the current token is, like, is that thing like actually valid by itself? And if it is, then you're done. And you just sorry, my dog's trying to, you can jump down, bud. It's okay. Come on, go. He feels better about jumping down than jumping up, so he's somewhat more confident. But oops. Basically, if at any point like we found something valid, then you just return that thing, because this is basically part of the like validation process where we're like looking at the string and we're either going to return the original string if it's valid, or we're going to return some kind of error message if it's invalid, describing why it's invalid. So the part of it that like you can see these cases at the bottom are the ones where there's errors. The part where I guess I was just noticing that Prettier like reformatted all this recently, right? Because of the ternary operator changes. I don't know if you guys saw that, but basically like this is the point at which we're like, all right, we tried everything, like it was none of these things. So like, let's give an error. So this is actually a very good encapsulation. This is the real type that I was looking for. This is like a very good encapsulation of like how I would handle this kind of scenario. So basically what you the like actual pattern that is that's really relevant here is I'll just say it like at sort of an abstract level, because there's like some extra stuff here. But at an abstract level, really like what it's doing is saying like well, I mean, we should probably actually look at God, this is several like the several layers to which I'm doing this. So I'll give you the high level version just because I don't want to go down the rabbit hole too much. But basically, all it's doing is saying like, is there any valid keyword that starts with what you've typed in? And if there is, then as the result of this whole like validation process, you return the full string that includes both what you've typed in and whatever the like valid completion would be that would turn that into a valid keyword. And that's actually pretty easy to do in like at a high level in TypeScript, because like, I mean, basically, you know, it's just this kind of thing where you're saying like, okay, like, you know, So you say string extends like str like infer like suffix or whatever that someone needs to type, right? And then if it does, like we know what they need to finish. Basically, what you needed was like whatever you've typed initially, which like depending on where in your expression you are, like that might also include things before the keyword that you're trying to complete. So that's important that you have like some state variable or just something that's just like, basically like parsed text or something so you can give the first part back. Otherwise, TypeScript won't complete it. But then you could basically say like, I'll just make like a fake reference or something like that and just say like, parsed text, like, or say you need to like add this. This is kind of basically nonsense at this point. But you kind of get this idea that like you're basically just doing a comparison to see what would need to be added in order to like make it a valid type. And then you can integrate that with the original part of the expression. And that's the like core mental model for what TypeScript is when they're going to give you a completion for something, is like if the actual type it basically like starts with like what the user has typed in, like TypeScript will generally give you a completion. There are scenarios where like of course it doesn't work, but like most of the time like you can get a lot working just relying on that and using that like validation pattern where you're saying like here's what was input. I will either return, so it's actually one of three things really. It's an error message, because if the thing if we find something we know is invalid, like a unfinished token or something like that, it's an error message. The best thing we can do is say like this is bad and here's why it's bad. Or a completion, which means it is an error. Like it's basically an error. We could just say every time that we wanted to complete something, we could say like, hey, this thing isn't resolvable. And that's actually what we do. That's what this extends never thing means. It is in cases where there's no valid suffix that will complete it, instead of giving back some weird never type that's probably very hard to parse, we just say like, hey, this thing is unresolvable. Like we don't know what you're trying to reference because there's nothing that starts with that. But then if there is like a completion, what you essentially end up returning, like I said, as long as it starts with what the person has actually typed in, which I guess now I'm looking at it is right here. That's what this scan thing is like what's already been scanned over. And then it just gives the like suffix that would make it valid. And as long as you do that, TypeScript will, auto-populate that as a completion. So that's the core strategy.
I am so stupid to understand this, but I'm really glad that Dan is like, yeah, cool.
Yeah. So
that brings a lot of hope.
It takes getting used to. I mean, it's honestly, it's actually not. It's not like a incredibly complex thing innately. It's just that like implementing functionality in the type system is something that takes practice, like learning any language. And this is a full parser written in the type system. So like, it's just like writing any other code. I mean, sure, I would not choose that as a language given like any option of syntax, but honestly, it's like not that far off like from a functional language and from those kind of patterns. Like once you get used to it and you can make good abstractions, like, yeah, sure, this stuff looks crazy looking at it as like, whoa, like I thought I was defining strings and numbers. But like once you sort of like see the mental model and the parallel between like, I'm really just writing functions and like, these are just the inputs to my functions and I'm just calling them. And like, it's actually it is not actually extremely complex inherently. So it can definitely be learned like as you get familiarity with that. Yeah, I think the stuff that's like extremely complex inherently is like, if you actually look at the type system where like all those constraints are compared that I said like allows you to, check if like a range is assignable to another range, or like if some union satisfies another union, like there's no getting around the fact that that is kind of a bitch or whatever. So it just is like that stuff is just hard. But this stuff, like you just get used to looking at it as a function, and then it's actually easy. I love like if I can just do stuff like this, like it feels so natural and like feels very it's so satisfying, right? To like work in the type system and like just see the stuff like happen as you type it, and like, oh, I just want to add some like new completion here or new token here, and you can do it so fast and just see everything work. And like once you get into that kind of like state with it, it's very satisfying. So I think what you're hoping for is definitely achievable. And I think that Alex, you'll definitely be able, if you know, if you want to focus on that aspect of it or whatever, if you just want to delegate it to Dan, but like you could definitely.
Oh no, I ain't gonna do that. Yeah, I don't do types. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. So it'll be delegated, but like, you know, anyone who wants to learn it, it's definitely less like people are just very scared of it because it looks crazy, but like it's really all the same like functional patterns that you'd kind of expect. And once you look at this, and instead of seeing a big mess of symbols and whatever, it just looks like, you know, calling a few nested functions or something. It is a lot less daunting. There's a huge there's this sort of like cliff where like everything's totally opaque, but once you just look at it and just see a function, then it just gets much better, and and that, you know, enables a lot of this kind of like type level functionality.
Yeah, my role is usually I'm like, can we do this? And then it's like, no, it's impossible. And then I play those psychological part, you know, I'm lurking in. Maybe we can do it this way. Maybe we can do it that way. And then when you motivate Dan enough, he's like, okay, let's try it out. And then he works that out. And
it's you know, in the context of something like this, like if you have a DSL that's like parse strings in TypeScript, I will say that like basically the limitations you'll hit, like obviously things that are extremely long and whatever, but like that's not realistic in the context of this kind of stuff. Like the limitations that I found are like, you know, if you're defining a union in a string, you can only include like 64 members, like in a string, in a single string. Like you can also just define it like as dot or like whatever, an expression. There's a lot in a scope. There's lots of ways to do it, but like it's not even a good pattern ever to like define 64 items in like a single union like that realistically for your validator. Like that's crazy. Like no one is gonna hit. Like that's just not a realistic scenario, really. I'm sure someone will prove me wrong, but like whatever. I don't think it's a good way to like write something like that. But what I'm anticipating based on like the little bit that I saw that you shared, like that you would run into, is you're more likely to hit limitations on like what TypeScript can autocomplete than you are in terms of what TypeScript can infer and validate. Like you will definitely be able to give. You will definitely be able to correctly infer anything from a string. Like if you have a string, it's just arbitrary logic. You can literally do anything you can do at runtime. Like there's no limitation on that at all. And you can also, and like part of inferring that, you can also provide any arbitrary error message related to that string, except maybe stuff like numeric computations or whatever going to have certain limitations. Like I'm not validating like things like ranges or whatever. Like, oh, you know, if I have 0 is less than a number is less than -5, like you'll get a runtime error
anyway.
But like at a type level, no. But like basically anything string related, you can do that stuff arbitrarily. But like you might hit a few cases where like depending on how long the thing is and depending on what kind of syntax you're using, like there are some weird rules about when TypeScript will provide completions. So, you know, when you hit those, you know, either you say like, hey, well, you know, it's not perfect, or you ping Mateusz or Andrist, and I'm sure he'll probably work on it. He works on a lot of those things and wants to implement everything. So I always talk to him when I run into TypeScript issues. But they are constantly improving it, and I think there's like reason to be optimistic that even some of those completion scenarios would be improved as well.
So my question about auto-completion is, I think our case is a bit different than like your auto-completion system that you have in ArkType, because, for example, in the simplest case, if we needed to define a relationship between two columns in two tables, right? We'll write something like column from first table, arrow, and column from the second table. But
I don't know if you could like share your screen, or if you want to do that, then maybe that would be.
If Alex can do it, yeah.
Okay.
Will be easier.
I won't be able to live code the type system.
Yeah. No need. I just had a question. So, what we actually need to autocomplete when we have nothing, like when we have an empty string, is just a list of columns from one table. But if we like autocomplete to that, if we actually type that column, that string on its own is not a valid input. Like it's not a valid result for the relation, because you need to go further. Like you need to define the destination table and destination column, which you need to reference. So my question was: is it possible to implement inference like that, so that it will autocomplete you stuff that is not a valid result in the end?
Okay, yeah, that's a good question. And I definitely see the issue. I think the answer. Oh God, I'm gonna have to think about this, because I thought about like related problems where like yeah, I never, like, you always want to make sure that like an error message could never, like the error message itself could never be like valid input. Like when you're using strings that way, you don't want to like complete the error message and then people like enter that and then that looks like a valid type. I'm just trying to think. So okay, so basically like let's say you're in that like initial scenario.
So as an example, on line 182, like we have already that references used already, and if we have an empty string initially, it would need autocomplete only owner ID column, and that's it, right? Just the list of columns from one table. But when you actually type owner ID that was offered by autocomplete, it's not like the end result. It shouldn't be allowed to be like a valid end result.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. I'm thinking about within a single string though. Okay, here's what I feel like we should do. I think okay, there's no, I think using the method that I just described, the answer is no, because okay, wait, is that true? Wait, maybe that's not true. Okay, hold on. Let me think about it, because basically like no, obviously it's true. Sorry, no, it's not true. Okay, I think I figured it out. No, so I don't know. The answer is that it is definitely possible, because semantic validation, because semantic validation works, and it can autocomplete things and then give errors about them. So that's definitely possible because I do that. Like for example, like in those kind of expressions that I mentioned, where I say like, where I say like, Boolean less than 5 or something, but then it wouldn't necessarily complete. I mean, Boolean would be on the left side, so like that wouldn't be super helpful. But like, it definitely. I mean, let's see. Let's just think through the process here of like what the inputs and outputs are. I think that's probably the most useful thing is. Yeah, no, this is 100% possible, because essentially like what I was thinking initially when you described it is that there needs to be like 2 validation passes or something like that, where it would have to like basically validate its validation result, which is not feasible. But like what is possible is you can literally, like, let's just as an example, right? So you could say like that does the input, like, just to keep it simple, extend like an empty string? And if it does, then you return these completions, right? And then you could say like, okay, does the input extend one of these completions? And if it does, then you can return whatever else you want. So yeah, there's nothing limiting you to like only have valid inputs as completions. Because basically like it's a mapping between inputs and outputs that's sort of arbitrary. Like what you have your like actual raw validation input that the person typed in, and then you have like you could literally return anything arbitrary as like what the type of that parameter should have been. So you could map any strings to anything. And once, I guess, the problem that I was thinking of initially was like, that how would you have that like second pass where you then like recheck it, but you're not rechecking the auto completion. You're rechecking it once they literally like actually complete that. So definitely it's possible.
Okay.
I was thinking, I don't know how much time we have, that we can sort of build like a function
Yeah, let's do it.
with two generics. But yeah, I mean,
No,
then,
Yeah.
I think it's.
I think it's going to be a bit more complicated than what you wrote.
yeah, it's gonna definitely be. I mean,
I could
if you,
if you want, like I can sort of like whip something up or whatever, and we'll just see.
Okay.
yeah,
let's just
I
try
think
to
it's
do it.
gonna be interesting for people who watch us to
Yeah.
see the power of
Like an MVP.
because the internals of ArkType, I don't think anybody here understands. I mean, except
Yeah.
Dan.
Hopefully,
Yeah,
me.
but
yeah.
but yeah, something like a very, very alpha version of we are talking about.
Yeah. Okay. So let's or what is it called? You said like it's a column or something.
Yeah. So
Reference.
Let's imagine we have like three tables with different columns, and we want to.
Let's make it two.
Yeah. Okay. Let's make it two tables
Yeah.
with like the different columns, and we need to declare a relationship between two different columns of those tables.
Okay. Well. Okay. So this is more like. Okay, so S extends empty string. We want to recommend a valid reference. S extends a valid reference. Valid reference. Then we want to do S. So yeah, S, and then so I don't know. You had some kind of error or something.
Yeah.
Like, and then so just to keep it simple initially, we'll just say like, you know, you want to map it to between the same columns in the same like table or something.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then otherwise like we'll say like S is not a valid column or something like that. And okay, so then we'll write like, so I don't know, I've actually not used like at all the like tag template literal string patterns and things like that, because like all of this stuff is like structural generally. So I'm like just wanting to actually utilize the like inbuilt structure of JavaScript objects.
I don't think we need to template literals for this case.
We don't. We certainly don't need it. So I'm just warning you that I'm not gonna. I'll write it as just like a normal string, but, and then you can do with it whatever you want. But basically like so this is like I guess sort of like a relationship definition or something like that. And so we'll add a generic parameter that will be like probably like def is usually what I use for that. And I guess we know that it's going to be a string probably. And validate relationship. Is that not well, that's just because it hasn't figured out that it's an arrow function yet. Validate relationship of def, and then we'll just say like whatever, maybe we'll just return relationship definition or something for now. And I guess parse relationship. Okay, so essentially parse relationship. All right, so here's the goal is you know, that we should ideally, if I clearly in this point it's not, I didn't get any completion, so that's not ideal. So yeah, let's see if we can figure out what I managed to screw up in this case, because we're checking like S against a bunch of stuff, and then we return valid reference, we return this thing. Didn't I check if S extends empty string, then I return valid reference? It should give completions for something like this, I would have thought. But I'm, you know, surely I'm just doing something wrong. So this is the type that I often use if I'm having conform. Does it not think I'm in a? Okay, well that's fine. So we could write like def extends valid relationship of def. This is a type that I used to use. I use this like a lot. It helps a lot with completions and things often.
Oh, I know.
Okay, so I don't know. I actually I would have expected this would have worked innately, but there's a type that I use, which I don't know why it actually wouldn't import that for me. This is called conform. It just does exactly this, and it's very, very useful. Like if you're trying to get completions to work.
Yep.
And I'm getting such weird behavior, I feel like, in my IDE that it's like not figuring out that that's actually a thing that I literally just imported that, right? Like that's so bizarre. Okay. Anyhow, so essentially I just use it like this, and wow, it's so bad. But basically like conform def to validate relationship of def, and this should work exactly the same way. It's the same thing, but this is just T and base, and you're just saying like, hey, you know, here's like what it has to be. So if it is this, then great, use it. But if it's not, then like return it so that people can see what it should have been.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like, it's very, very helpful for TypeScript in a scenario like this to basically ensure that TypeScript knows. And now that I think about it, the validate definition generic that I wrote actually does have like, you pass in the original, it looks sort of similar. So, but it basically ensures that that relationship is, that this input is paralleling like what it's going to actually give completions on and what it will infer here. So you can see it's, you know, it knows you passed in an empty string, but then it's saying, oh, well, that's not actually assignable to 1, 2, or 3. So then hopefully now you get 3. And but since 3 is a valid reference, you get these completions. So like the question is like, I guess, you know, what this is gonna get into like weird VS Code like completion sort of stuff, because like if I start typing one of these, right, like okay, is not a valid column. So we'll have to, we basically have to write a little bit. Let's here, just for the sake of like, you know, I'm just gonna use this because I know that how this works. And it okay, let's see. So we'll go back here. We'll say like 3, and then if I do this, so then we get right. So basically at that point, like what we'd want to be checking is you could even do it, I guess, like this, where you'd say like, all right, let's complete, and I'm tempted to like switch it to the arrow, but we can do that at the end. Let's minimize the number of variables, right? So we'll say like s extends valid reference plus this, then we want to add another valid reference onto that, right? So then we say valid reference.
We basically describe every autocompletion step as a separate condition. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So let's see what that does. So if we did do this, oh, I must have done this. Oh, extends. Which one did
Maybe
I?
Maybe you also need a conform inside there, or.
Let's see. Well, let's see what it's inferring. Okay. So this is bad. So this is bad because it doesn't know that the input that we passed in was actually just 3, or it like inferred something else as the input, which is definitely not what we want. I kind of just like wonder about what other. No, that didn't help. So what I'll say is like, you know, so some of this stuff might look sort of like, oh, this could be a pain, and honestly, the hardest thing about this is like getting TypeScript to associate your input definition with this. Like this should just say 3 or, right? It should be exactly what you passed in for this kind of pattern. But if you just have strings, it's probably much easier, I would say, than like if you have objects and things like that. But like, you know, even though I screwed this up somehow and like
it's on line 282. It's I mean, you expect that 3 or will extend valid reference, and it will not.
Well, I think the idea is like that if this s parameter is inferred as like just being 3 or, then like when we actually go in and check this, like this shouldn't pass because s extends valid reference is not true because it's got some extra thing at the end of it. So essentially, like what like basically, I wanted to highlight that like in ArkType I never run into because once you have any kind of like validate definition thing working that's like associates the input with the output correctly, like you're never going to have this kind of issue again. You just have to get it right once, but then every like time you work on any kind of like inference step like this, it's never going to affect that like the way that those two things are correlated. So this isn't actually like a big recurring problem. This is just something we run into. But here's my guess, right? Is like, okay, like I don't really know why TypeScript is doing this exact thing. But what I can say is like, well, you know, what could help? Well, maybe it could help if we like had a separate, I mean, I guess it could help like switching this back to be an explicit check that's not a call to another generic. That would be one thing we could try. Another thing we could try is to have like another parameter for the validated definition that would be auto inferred, and we'll just set it equal to like set it equal to this, and then we could do validated definition. I mean that would be something, but it doesn't seem to work because it's still exactly the same.
I think it's
yeah. But like my other thought was like, am I distributing over a union somewhere somehow, or something like that? Like if I were to like adjust one of these checks, like to sort of, you know, I don't know, be yeah, maybe like, ooh, okay, that's doing something, maybe. Like these kind of, you know, making the unions non-distributive, that would be probably, okay, so there you go. So maybe, okay, let's try. All right, so it didn't want to recommend 3, or I mean, it does recommend 3, but then this is sort of a, maybe we shouldn't distribute that one. 3, okay. The thing is like, oh, right. Okay, here's the thing. We can never complete this. That was like the insight that I had in ArkType, is you can't complete the symbol itself. You can complete after the symbol, but you can't, this will never work. Even though like this is one of those things when I was like, you'll run into certain limitations in TypeScript, like with what it can do with autocompletion. Like this should work according to how TypeScript handles completions in general, but it just doesn't do it. So like, you know, this is going to end up being useless. But like, let's say that you know that you can do this or whatever, then the idea would be like that you get this completion step. So I don't know. We'll see if we can like kind of get this working. But like, or we could see if we could get it working. But this is essentially the pattern that I would use, and I definitely think that like what you're describing is doable as long as the user can type in the error themselves. We won't be able to help them with that part because it's just the way the TypeScript works. You know, they could still get an error message that said like, hey, you have to add an arrow or something. But like, as long as they can do that part of it, then definitely there is a way to like get the second half of it to autocomplete. And we can poke around a little bit more at like what that actually might look like. I mean, the most obvious thing that's going on here is, is that like this should have been S. So that was a big mistake there. So I don't know if this is gonna like actually. So okay, so it's still not actually completing these other ones, but my guess is maybe just like I know that like when I initially wrote that sort of the autocomplete function for ArkType, and we wrote the comparison that was like, does like what we've typed in, is it like a prefix of some of like one of the valid reference types or something like that? There was like a specific check that we had to make to allow that kind of completion to work. And you know, this is the kind of thing where we're in the territory of like, this isn't like logic. You can't logic your way through this problem because it's just the internals of TypeScript in some like kind of, you know, however they happen to implement their completion algorithm. Like there's some weird rules about when it will do this kind of thing. So this like is like hack at it and get it to work, and then if you ever need, like, put it in a utility that you will use whenever you need to do this thing, because like it's not you know, I only have one place in the code where I like, you know, have that like auto completion utility defined that like makes those checks, and I know that it works and I reuse it everywhere. But like, you know, getting this specific thing to work, like we could sort of we could sort of like poke at this for a little while and say like, oh, like maybe I should make the check this way. Like maybe I have to compare it and see like if this is a prefix of this by, checking in the opposite direction or something like that. But I can say like that it's definitely achievable, like some version of this. I can't say whether the arrow in VS Code will give you access to completions, because there is some weirdness with like it interprets certain characters as like terminating characters, I think, and like, so I don't know for sure whether or not like that would be one of them that it would treat as like, okay, we're starting something new, so that seems to have some correlation with like how that in expression completion works. But I think if you go down this path, and I feel like Dan definitely gets where I'm like going with this, and would be able to kind of like run with that, then you'll at least be able to find pretty quickly like what the boundaries are. Like specifically, I just think the main thing you'd run into is like whether the arrow is like would trigger completions in VS Code, because I don't know like what exactly goes into defining those characters, but who knows. But if again, like I think if you actually just think about the way that those completion steps work and this kind of pattern, like it's definitely doable to like complete part of it and then say that what you just completed is invalid by itself. Like that's we did solve that. We did solve that because we did it like here. Yeah. But yeah, obviously, my discriminated unions here need a little bit of cleanup. So we'll figure that stuff out. Or not, sorry, distributed unions there need a little bit of cleanup. But yeah, so I could like send this over, but I think you probably also understand. But I'm happy to like send the snippets. You can iterate on that and make some beautiful version of it.
Please send it.
Cool.
Yeah, or we can always fall back to JSONs. Yeah.
Well, I mean, like, if you think about it, I mean, I don't know exactly like what the sort of, I don't know. I'd have to like learn more about the API you're working at. But like, if you think about something like ArkType, it is like JSON. In fact, like, it can be serialized to JSON most definitions, unless you include like custom functions and things like that aren't serializable. So like another option often is like that for anything that could be JSON, like, I mean, I guess it depends on how you're using it, but like if you just have some kind of structured object, you can still have all these completions and everything like that, like within any kind of arbitrary structure. So like you could think about ways you might be able to leverage that. But if it's just like defining these relationships, it'd be fun to like talk more about the API, because I'd definitely be interested in kind of like what it looked like you had a long like list of iterative thought process on like how that API would look. Yeah, so I guess I unfortunately am still pretty much have like no idea of like what it's actually doing, other than defining.
Yeah.
I guess, okay, because you had like certain syntax for like this colon this. This is like a table, a reference to a table and then a column, or how does that?
So we have the tables and columns, and like some columns are referencing other columns from another table.
Yeah. Okay, so that's sort of like why the syntax is valuable, to like be able to specify neatly this like correlation between the table and the column. Or are there other sort of like operators that you would have in this DSL that you'd be like using to extract things or things like that?
I can share. This string approach was like taking into account that the original thing we wanted to do is not possible. Is when you declare a table, and let's say you have reports too, and then you're like, okay, this is gonna be integer, not interface. Why? I don't have inputs.
Yeah, inputs are broken.
Yeah, it's okay. And it's gonna be like report ID, and we have like these references, which is a callback, and it's gonna reference the user's ID, which works completely fine. And if you have a circle reference to yourself while you are declaring the object, we will have to say that this is gonna be like
PG column.
any PG
Oh, yeah,
column.
yeah.
Any
Yeah,
PG
so
column.
we need to manually specify the type,
Yeah.
like the return type of the function to resolve the circle reference.
Yeah, and then it's
because-
gonna work. Yeah.
Yeah. Otherwise,
But-
the table type cannot be resolved because like
Oh.
Yeah, but this stuff does not change
Oh.
the original type. If we can make it like has one, has one, and then point to this column, or make it a JSON here. So from,
Okay.
and then users ID, reports to.
Ah,
Two.
I understand.
Users
Okay.
ID.
I think.
But this will
yeah.
potentially change
Right.
or it might
I
not
get-
change. I don't know.
Okay,
While I was
I
writing
actually-
this, I'm not sure.
Okay. Well, I actually think that I worked on something similar in scopes. So maybe I'll share that, which I think is actually like a very parallel problem to what you were just showing. And I just don't have any of the context on the database stuff, so you guys will have to fill me in on that. But let me share my screen here. And okay, so this is also something I have not. Here, I'll get rid of this, and I will just make a note here, and I'll send that over. But let's see. Okay, so oh gosh, the cat's chewing on all my cords. So the like thunk stuff. Okay. Okay. So basically, you can like define types in thunks, and that works. That's like allowed. This is like, I think is not very useful. This, like, I don't really know what you would use this for, but it's just sort of for consistency's sake that it works. But like this is useful because you are defining a scope of types, and you are referencing that scope and using it to define types that like have, auto completion and have all the same benefits that like reference other stuff that you use here. And we don't need to like explicitly type anything, and it will actually like infer all this stuff correctly, or it should. I maybe like screwed it up just now, but like some previous or not just now, but like, this is like a dev branch, so I might have screwed it up, but I'm 100% sure that this can work. So like, there might be a way to actually just, you can see what the test is actually saying. Like, there might be a way to actually make all that stuff resolve using some kind of like, I think it's a similar pattern, right? You have like user.id. So maybe there's a way to do it. But I mean, it was a little bit like, this is the kind of thing where you have to be careful. This is actually one of the things that I'm like, if there's things that I sort of worry about a little bit with like TypeScript, publishing some version that would like break something like this. Like most of the stuff that's like parsing logic and that sort of thing. Like I'm like, this is literal, this is like math and like declarative statements, and like there's no way that TypeScript would break this because it's just pure logic written in the type system. But like these kind of like inference things with cyclic patterns and stuff like that, and like this was like, I mean, again, like whatever this version of it is doesn't actually give the correct type. It says A is never. But you'll have to trust me that this actually works in whatever correct version. And basically the fact that when I first implemented this and it actually worked, I was like, how? Like the fact that TypeScript can resolve that it was mind blowing. Like I was like, I'm like defining this thing and then referencing, referencing like the scope that I'm in the process of defining to like define a type in that scope. And it's one thing, like, the actual natural way to write this would just be to do like, this is how you actually should write this thing, would just be like B and like B a string. Okay, so this is what you should write. You should never do this, but like what this is useful for is like, you saw the like chaining stuff or whatever. Like basically it's useful if you actually want to like do something like type or this or that or whatever, and you can't rely on like pure syntax, but you do want to reference other aliases in the same scope and have that be like completed and everything for you. Because again, like if I change this, like, you know, I'll get an error here that like, again, this is crappy and sucks. But like, because I broke it somehow, but you can see that it does know like this is actually what it, well, it's actually pretty, I don't know why this implicit. Yeah. This is actually what you want. B is not assignable to these 3 things that actually start there. And now instead it's going to like recommend this. So, and it's able to like infer that correctly as well. So it actually like resolves the return type of this. There are certain limitations. Like I think if like certain types of like cross-referencing cyclic types can't be written this way, but you know, there may be possibilities depending on like what kind of API like that you're working on, that like some of this stuff could actually work with like the right set of checks. You just have to be cautious about like how you compare things when you're validating the type, because if you sort of ask TypeScript to check too much too early, it won't be able to infer all the details of like what you passed in. So you have to be like very conservative and like kind of have these initial steps. You're like, oh, it looks like a function. I'm not going to check anything else about it, but it like looks like it's some kind of function with any arguments or something. And then later on, like at a later step, essentially, you can actually like infer the details of what it is and it will work. But you know, I'll just throw that out there because it looked like a very similar idea to what you guys were working on.
Yeah, it is, and it's actually very useful that you showed us this scope thing, because I think I can use it as a reference to see how exactly it is implemented. So,
yes, well, not exactly. Don't look at exactly how it's implemented on this branch. But actually, those cyclic thunks and stuff like that were on alpha also. So just look at the alpha implementation. I guarantee that works.
All right. Yeah.
Cool.
Perfect. This was very useful. I hope the viewers did enjoy the TypeScript.
Oh, sorry. I just I lost you for like a second there.
I said I hope the viewers did enjoy the TypeScript lessons today.
Yes. Well, I think they were maybe a little I'm sure there's some like TypeScript gurus who are, you know, that's my mother, I think. So probably maybe not her. But you know, but I'm sure there's probably some TypeScript gurus in there who hopefully got something.
You dropped off at the same words.
I'm sorry about that. Where was I?
Some TypeScript gurus.
Yeah. Well.
Oh yeah. Andrew, are we wrapping up? Yeah, I think.
Andrew wrote us that he cannot really hear us because his sound is broken. So we will need to wrap up for him.
Okay, then thank you everybody for joining the stream, and I hope you enjoyed it, and you sort of had a possibility to sneak a peek on how we design the APIs in Drizzle, and how we struggle with types, and how we debate about impossible stuff to do in TypeScript. Yeah, but as you see, we are keen to push the boundaries of what we do to make your user experience better, and that's the number one goal.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I'm sorry I keep dropping off. I have no idea what's going on there. I could like write in chat and everything, but server was not working for the video chat for some reason. But no, that was super exciting, and I was going to say that I look forward to working with you guys more on these types in the future. I feel like the nice thing about just having spent a lot of time like immersed in this is, and I think the problems we're working on have like a ton of parallels. I think that like a lot of those kind of validation, a lot of those like the validation and inference stuff I've worked on is like very directly related to what it looks like you guys are trying to solve. So I think there's definitely value there where like, like if you're struggling with something, I'm always happy to try to help out, because it's pretty likely that like, I can just reference something I've worked on at some point or done at some point, and like it'll probably be relevant. And it seems like Dan is pretty adept at like taking a look at some of that stuff and then running with it. So
Yep.
yeah, that's great. And then I know likewise, like our documentation is awful, and it seems like you have some areas where you'll be able to help us out as well. So I'm
Yeah.
really excited for all of that.
Yeah, for those who don't know, we agreed to collaborate with ArkType. So David will help us with types on Drizzle, and we are gonna build a documentation website for him, similar to what we have right now. And as soon as he's gonna spend a lot of time describing everything and documenting everything, we will see when we have the content ready within the layouts we'll provide. Then we'll see how we can improve on that, because
Yeah.
we have a lot of experience with writing good handcrafted docs, and David has a lot of experience with types. So yeah, that's the best way we can help each other.
Definitely. I'm very excited for that. And if Andrew, if you wanted to maybe do another charity plug, I feel like it's been quite a while unless I missed one. So maybe if you want to.
Unfortunately, Andrew doesn't hear us, and
Well, I can write him.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
For those who recently has joined the stream, this is a donation stream, and we are collecting money to support Ukraine. And you can donate through the QR link on the stream, or you can scroll up, and there are. I will just duplicate the link here.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Or you can donate via the link. It should work, but some people told us that it doesn't work, and we contacted the bank, and they were trying to resolve the issue. And we've discussed this prior to the stream, and they told us that everything's gonna work, and we are in a whitelist for outside the Ukraine donations, but something still went wrong. But hopefully they will fix it further. So yeah, that's basically it. Hopefully everyone enjoyed, and thank you, David, for the TypeScript lessons. What I was thinking about is that you are at the position where you have an outstanding amount of TypeScript knowledge to do like high level TypeScript courses. Like for the I mean, if you'd have if you'd had something like streams of building ArkType or grinding.
Yeah, I actually did stream that for a while. So if people want to, I'll shout out my stream. If you want to follow me, it's ArkType.io. I think I typed in the chat, so you can follow that channel. I haven't streamed it a little while, but I think it would be fun to like start doing that again. To be honest, I've just been stressed about like my beta release, and I wanted to have that done for a while, as a lot of people know. And I'm so excited to like share all that stuff I've been working on with people. But I think like as I sort of didn't meet some of the goals that I had set for that, like in terms of the timeline, that I was honestly just like, it's hard to feel like I am able to sort of like do things as publicly at that point. I mean, I am very public in my Discord and on Twitter and whatever, but like, I'm always just like, I'm like, I should just get it done. Like, just go. Just don't worry about anything else. So I think that kind of like got the better of me a little bit in that regard. But I always like loved streaming, and I like just like, I don't know. I like coding on stream, and I like just like getting to interact with people in the community and answering questions and doing even stuff like this. It's a lot of fun for me. I think like when it comes to courses and things, I think you're right that I've done a lot of unique stuff like in TypeScript. Exactly. And so I do have a lot of specialized knowledge. I wish I could just get the benefit of like, I wish someone could just like extract it and like make a course. Because it's a lot of work is the problem. And like, as I mentioned, I'm pretty much like already sort of like to the wall in terms of the amount of stuff that I have. So like, it's always one of those things that crosses my mind, and that sort of people suggest like creating more of that kind of content. But I feel like for me, the current priority which hopefully anyone on the stream from ArkType will be happy to hear, is just finishing beta is like the #1 thing. So I can't really like let other things, at least until then. We'll see after that. But like, I'm so excited about ArkType and so excited about the potential of the project that like I'm pretty hard pressed to like, be like, oh, I should do another thing, like build a course or something, just because I'm like, it would take away a lot of time. But
definitely.
maybe someday, or if somehow I can collaborate with someone who can like distill the essence. If they could like interview me for a few hours or something like that, and then like make a course, then like what, that's great. But I know how much work goes into that, creating that kind of content, like, and making it really good. And it's just the time commitment that I couldn't do. But
I thought about this format because this is basically the way we design API in Drizzle. When we are like, me personally, I fantasize about the how would I wanna the API to look, and then we groom through the ways to implement this in TypeScript. And so by just implementing the ArkType and streaming this, people have to be deeply into the underlying structure of ArkType and the goals of what you're doing right now, etc. I don't think this is going to be like for a high volume of people. But if this is like but if
it's definitely not the goal. I mean, the goal would be to like be productive, like the way I would normally, and then also just answer some questions and like get to interact with the community a bit and have some fun. But I'm not gonna like explain the details of everything that I do. What I will say, which is probably pretty surprising to people, is that like I would say at this point that it's actually, I've spent more time working on ArkType's internal type system and like ArkType's like constraints and the ability to compare types and the set-based type system and sort of like optimizing unions and all that kind of stuff that I did on the like static parser and all the like type level stuff. I mean, I think just both, I love that this project is such a cool project to work on, where I get like so many awesome aspects of it that are like really genuinely fun and beautiful problems. I would say that I describe the TypeScript aspect of it as more fun, and I describe the like type system aspect of it as more beautiful because it's like a pure sort of like set based, type system, and it's like a really amazing thing to work on. And I think it has the potential to be very impactful. But like most of my development recently has been on the type system, and it has been on like kind of what's going on under the hood there, which frankly is like less accessible, maybe. Unfortunately, like it's very complicated sort of to like ramp up on how to think about set-based types and like comparing unions and things and like that. It's in a language that people can understand, so that's helpful. But like in terms of like the complexity level, as I kind of alluded to previously, like it's hard to do. But yeah, I'm glad. Like I'm actually recently I've really been craving doing more like type level work because it's just really satisfying, and like you just like bang out some cool functionality, and like it's just like it's so clean and just like feels really good to build. So I'm always happy to like chime in if you guys are working on design iterations or something like that. Something I do a lot. I mean, I even mentioned like what the original inspiration for ArkType was like, what's the closest thing we can get to TypeScript that can work at runtime in native JavaScript. And it was the same kind of thought process of like, what does my ideal like API look like? What are my sort of options? And I'm always going through that stuff as well. So yeah, if you guys are ever looking for an extra opinion, I'm always happy to throw my 2 cents in.
Thank you so much. Yeah, this makes a lot of sense. All right, I think we can wrap up. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, David. Yeah,
I had a great time.
Have a good evening. Yeah, it was really nice.
Thanks for everyone who joined the stream, and hopefully look forward to some more collaborations soon between us and Drizzle.
Yeah, thank you. All right, see you, everybody. Have a good day.
Yeah.
Yeah, bye.